Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of We Are Trans presents, yes, that many, presents Trans Talks. I usually, people who realize this, start with just me and then I bring you up. But you know what? This is fine. They get to see you. I'm introducing you. We have a lovely guest for this episode. I am so excited to talk to them. We have lawyer, partner at Argentino. I had the name Argentino Law and Advocacy. Argentino Fiore Law and Advocacy. You know, it doesn't help that the website is still argentinolaw.com.
That's true. It's true. No, you're right. And it's funny because yesterday, Jody Argentino referred to it as her firm. And I was like, oh, really? It's just yours. Whose name is the Fiore then? Let me ask you. Anywho, no worries about the name. And then I do that other thing too, because whatever, being a lawyer is not enough. I should start a nonprofit, right?
Do it.
Do it. Did it.
I know. Did it.
There. I did it.
But please tell, first, your name is Celeste.
It is.
You could have told them that. Welcome. Tell the people watching a little bit more about yourself. Specifically pronouns, even though they're on the screen, and what words you use for yourself, but go into as much detail as you want.
Sounds good. So thanks again, Sammy, for having me on. And there's always something interesting that happens right around anytime we talk to each other. So of course there was one today, but if we get to that, we get to that. But
yeah,
my name is Celeste Fiore. I am a non-binary transmasculine person. I use they, them pronouns, and I use the honorific mix. What else? What other words do I use to describe myself? Queer. Usually an a-hole, but like I'm a nice a-hole, or like really I don't, like just be nice. And then if you're not, then there are problems. I'm Italian, so like there is a lot to like the stereotypes of like my hands are like already flying around, so I kind of identify with that a little bit. I think my friends and family would probably refer to me as a nerd, but to true nerds, I'm like a dabbler. Do you know what I mean? So it's like in the hierarchy, in like the scheme of things, where I'm like, yeah, I like Star Wars a lot, but listen, I'm still making my way through the entire non-canon. Like I'm watching Lego, the free, what the heck are their names? The free makers, the ones that are the salvagers, and it's Legos. I don't know. I like it. It's adorable. I'm into it.
Hey, I mean, this nerd, but other nerds would call Dappler doesn't know what you're talking about. So
perfect. All right, good. So apparently your nerdness does not intersect with my nerdness, at least on that point. So okay, good. We're fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I consider myself pretty eclectic. I describe myself as somebody who really likes to make connections between people. I don't want to necessarily connect because I find it exhausting. I'm one of those introvert, extrovert, like right in the middle. So I'm like, I think they call us an ambiverts. Yeah. So I'm really cool at being like, hey, you like My Little Pony? My friend so-and-so likes My Little Pony. And then they get married because they both like My Little Pony. So I'm not like a matchmaker necessarily, and I don't know the right word for that. Maybe somebody else does. So that's kind of how I self-identify. I also do Taekwondo. I'm testing for my green belt tomorrow. Ooh, I know, right?
Yeah, I grew up in karate, so
really, yeah, me too. When I was younger, I got a black belt, earned my black belt. But I was like 18, or 17. So does anything that you do before you're 18 really count? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure. I like to think yes and no, but anyway.
Yeah. So, would you like to tell people a little bit about your law firm, about Argentino Fiore Law and Advocacy?
I would love to. So we are a queer-owned, queer-focused law firm, and that Q word, I mean, we say LGBTQIA plus on most of our marketing, or LGBTQ, but really we cater to people that wouldn't feel like they can go to a family lawyer or and say, like, this is what my life really looks like. So people who are who are poly, or who are in the kink scene, and might have kids and are concerned about when they're getting divorced, like their former primary partners or play partners coming in and like making some sort of weird claims, and so just having somebody that they don't have to explain, or explain that their lifestyle is valid, and kind of like just be able to talk about, like, okay, well, here are the logistics of what my life looked like, and having no value judgment, but also kind of being able to take little pieces of the like parts of the law and cobble them together to make something that works. We also do education law, and anti-bullying, so there's a lot of and really people or things that touch the LGBTQ community. I've had more calls for families of people who have been involuntarily committed and who might need mental health assistance, but they're not in an affirming facility. Which, like, if you're trans or gay or bi, or like you're struggling with sexual orientation and or gender identity issues and a mental illness, it should be a no-brainer that you shouldn't have to justify who you are when you're trying to deal with other issues. Like, that's silly. But that's kind of how our practice works, is that, you don't have to like explain gender or transness or what your name is versus what it was. And like, just tell me who you are and let's go on from there. And we'll figure out how to make sure that everybody else knows who you are. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the questions I wanted to ask, this kind of gets into that, is, what are some concerns or issues facing the communities that you represent that straight cis people might not be aware of? Because I think, a lot of straight cis people know about, I mean, it's been law for a while, but like, marriage and bathrooms.
Right.
It's like that's.
They know what the law is on marriage. Like, you're allowed to get married. They're still not sure about bathrooms, but they know it's a thing for sure.
Yeah.
They're just not sure how it shakes out. And for everybody watching, it should shake out where you pee wherever you want to. In the bathroom. Anyway, yeah, I just was part of a panel yesterday for the Essex County Bar Association. So a bunch of lawyers, and talking about LGBTQ issues in their practice. And I talked about some family law things. So just to keeping it trans, some of the things that come up for trans kids is not being affirmed by one or both parents. So that is a very unique issue for trans kids. It is one of being trans, or LGBT in general, is one of the only times where your first bully might be your parent or primary caretaker, because the thing that makes you stand apart is your queerness. It's not usually, your parents or caretakers might share the same race, or at least they already knew what race you were, so they're probably not going to bully you on that point, but they didn't necessarily expect that you were going to be LGBT. And unfortunately, genetics in the universe does not always give LGBT kids to the most affirming parents. And so, sometimes those are struggles. But also, if you're a trans kid, you might have the most affirming parents, and they might be coming to me because they want to help you change your name, on your identity documents or in your school records or any of those things. So I see that a lot. And there are different concerns for privacy for trans people changing their names than there are for somebody who's going from Stephen to Michael. Outing ourselves can, put us at increased risk for all of the negative things. And we know that. The statistics say that. So, my philosophy is there shouldn't be any more barriers or hurdles to have to jump over in order to make yourself safe. Like, you should just be able to do those things easily. For parents who come out as trans, sometimes that means that their relationship with their kids is strained because their spouse, who they were married to, no longer wants to be married to them. Whether or not that has to do with their transness or not, when families and couples are breaking up, like, it can be really nasty. And so you use all of those things that can hurt somebody, and somebody's transness is definitely, could be one of those things. So sometimes using unscrupulous, I don't know, one of those words, without scruples, attorneys will use somebody's transness to try to get a leg up in litigation. Like, I'm going to make them look weird. And so then I come in and I'm like, I'm weirder than the client. Good luck. But anyway, and then, it can also impact your relationship with your kids. If you were known as mom or dad and now you're going to be the opposite or something different, that can be really tough. And it's tough on both people. It's tough on the person who's, being authentic with themselves, and it's tough on the young people who are going through, a transition and a change too. So helping people get through those issues outside of a conflict situation is a full-time job. And so then you add in divorce and custody and scary things like having to sell your house and find somewhere else to live. Taking that extra stress off the table is really important. So find yourself a lawyer that knows your community. And then we represent regular, like, straight people in, like, very vanilla relationships, and they totally know that I'm non-binary and that our firm logo has a rainbow in it, and they're like, okay, cool, whatever, that's great. And I remember when we were developing our marketing, and somebody said, well, aren't you concerned that you're going to limit, your client base? And we were like, well, maybe, but if they were going to get weirded out by the fact that we're like those LGBT lawyers, then we probably didn't want to represent them. They probably wouldn't want us to represent them anyway. So I don't think we're, like, missing out on anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But now going on to things that the straight cis people might be aware of. What is some current legislation that is very troubling and facing we're a trans organization, specifically the trans community, but the LGBT community in general. I think we both know, and the people watching might know, but talk on it if you'd like.
Sure. I think that there has been a rise in anti-trans legislation in this country, and that's part of a playbook from, the anti-marriage campaigns. It's the same organizations, most of which have been designated as hate crimes organizations by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they advance, pretty much cookie cutter, horrible legislation. So if you take a look at some of the bills, like the ones that have either passed or are pending, which would, try to prevent transgender mostly girls, right? Yeah. Transgender girls from playing sports. And that is a bill for a problem that doesn't exist because transgender girls are already playing sports, and they've played sports for a really long time, and people have been teammates with them and coaching them, and it has not been a big deal. So I know that Rebecca Brusahoff who's a New Jersey and a proud New Jerseyan, formerly of Sussex County and now of, I don't know, some southern county, has been making the tour of kind of saying like, hey, guess what? I'm a trans girl and I play field hockey and I'm still not scary and I still have friends and I haven't ruined the entire sport for all women. And I don't mean to be flippant about just like this stuff, but that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And if you take a step back, it's really ridiculous. And I think I saw the other day, and I might be wrong, even Louisiana's governor wouldn't sign one of these bills into law. Now, that means that it passed both houses of their legislature, but even the governor of Louisiana wouldn't sign it. So I feel like for us Northerners, that kind of paints a picture, and whether or not that's accurate or not is one thing, but it exists. And these bills are passing, and they're being signed by governors. And that is the least concerning. The other really concerning bills are the ones that are going to criminalize parents or criminalize medical providers for providing medically, and I hate to use this phrase, medically necessary treatment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because we kind of have moved away from this idea that for all trans people, some sort of medical transition is necessary, right? But for those people who it is, to criminalize a doctor for doing what they're ethically obligated to do, which is help a patient, and to criminalize and make it child abuse for a parent to affirm their transgender child. And this is ridiculous because it's not just like, oh, are you giving them medical intervention? It could be something like using the name that they want to use or referring to them by the right gender. So they're really scary. And I wonder if we're going to see relocation of families with trans kids out of hostile states. And that's an extra queer tax that, presumably straight cis people who are the parents of these trans kids are not used to paying. Now they have to in order to protect their kids, and it's really troubling.
Yeah. And I'm sorry to start with 3 heavy questions in a row. We will get to the fun stuff. That's
what you promised me. You promised me this, but when?
And I'm going to ask this. But it's something I'm legitimately curious about, and I think we both know that it does still exist. But I'm wondering if you in your practice have had to deal with any if you can talk about any cases of medical gatekeeping, because it's not to the extent that it once did, but it still absolutely exists, and we both know that it does.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to know. Please break my heart with the extent.
I mean, where to begin? I'm gonna pick it up at a slightly different place than you might think.
Sure.
So say you found an affirming provider who, and I'm going to take this 2 ways. One is assuming that there needs to be any sort, or somebody wants some sort of medical intervention and is being gatekept from that. But then the other is institutions or organizations or people who assume that there needs to be some sort of medical thing to begin with. So let's just assume, using this older paradigm, that somebody wants access to medical treatment. Inherently, there's going to be some sort of gatekeeping, because there's going to be, the hoops that still are you have to jump through are some sort of letter from a psychologist or a psychiatrist saying that you have capacity or something. I don't know, or what you're getting into. I've had a couple of surgeries. I broke my finger, literally this finger, which was great. I had this little tip of metal on here. And so I'd be like, look where I broke my finger. It was obnoxious, but I loved it. And I was not in my early 20s when this happened. So anyway, But they didn't ask me when they were gonna, do surgery to put this pin in. They didn't, go through make me talk to a psychologist to make sure that I understood that I was gonna have a piece of metal sticking out of my middle finger for weeks while it healed. So, but the only reason why it needed to be set was cosmetic. It could have healed just fine on its own. But I didn't have to go through that other, like, are you of sound mind or do you understand what you're doing in order to have that surgery? So for a lot of surgeries, we have to go through that hoop and it's ridiculous. The second is just trying to navigate insurance coverage for anything. And, I have to give a plug to Charlie Arrowwood and Noah. I'm going to forget his last name. That's fine. They are now at Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, TELDF in New York. They used to be at Transcend Legal, but one of their big projects is access to healthcare. So they help people with insurance denials and help them navigate that process and, do some impact litigation. So I send everybody who's dealing with insurance company denials or doctors issues up to them because they know what they're doing. They're experts on it. And so and that's a nonprofit. So you don't have to pay for those services if you don't have the money, right? Mm-hmm. But that's kind of all well and good, but for every time and every moment that like you're going without something that you need, kind of like if you have a vitamin D deficiency, you should take a pill. If your body and your mind need estrogen, you should be taking estrogen. Right? Like so every day that goes by, much like vitamin D, it has impacts on your body and mind. So like that medical gatekeeping really impacts. So then let's go back to this whole notion of transition. And I'm so over it. I'm over this, like, you have to like be this beautiful butterfly thing that started off as this ugly creature, and then you beautiful ducklinged into this butterfly that had surgeries and wants to talk about it, and then you eventually want to be a mom or something. I don't know. That's what I feel like the story always is. It's weird. And like, listen, that could be somebody's story, and that's fine. I'm not trying to yuck somebody else's yum, but there shouldn't be any requirements that one have to do anything to their bodies to be who they are or want to be. And that, everybody who's trans is trans enough. Yeah. And everybody who wants to change their gender marker on their driver's license should be, or have a passport, or have a record with Social Security that reflects who they are without needing some letter from a doctor saying that they are who they are. I mean, and I'll tell you, I've worked with some families who had really good doctors who were like, yes, I will write a letter that says little Johnny is a boy. I performed a surgery on little Johnny. Johnny is now a boy, or you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, yeah, I like removed his tonsils, but I still know he was a boy before. And yeah, I performed surgery on him and now he's a boy after. Of course I can sign that certification. I'm like, excellent. You're absolutely right. You totally can. But it is really a tough place to be in, because people will want to ask questions like, oh, so when are you going to have surgery? Or when did you have surgery? And you're like, wow, cool. When did you become an asshole? Like, is that like sooner, like later? Did you have an accident? Were you born that way? I don't know. Or this like legit, like this idea that you have to be legitimized by doing something to your body. And so personally, I had this epiphany, and I am honest about the fact that I am not a non-binary trailblazer by any stretch of the imagination, right? But because I'm novel in my own little like universe, it feels like I might be. But I remember the first time that I encountered a non-binary trans man or a non-binary trans masculine person. And I remember being like, but I don't get it. isn't non-binary like in the middle? How can you want to modify your body to be more masculine? Like, wouldn't that be doing? And I remember having these same like weirdly gatekeepy thoughts myself, and then realizing like, oh no shit, I really want to do that. That's exactly me. That's totally me. I want a beard and my name to be Celeste. Perfect.
Are we the opposites of each other?
I don't know. I mean, if that story resonated with you, but on the other end, then yeah, we are opposites of each other.
Just like, give me my breasts and my vest.
I love it. Thank you.
That was just off the top of my head right now. It's
really? Like... Oh, I like that. You got to make that into some material for sure.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so I promised you we are on the fun stuff. Okay. I ask this question every episode.
Okay.
What is your comfort food, comfort music, and comfort movie?
Comfort food, comfort music, comfort movie. Okay. As I have various triggers, I have various different comforts for each of my triggers.
All right.
Okay. I'm not going to get too in depth, but some of my comfort foods are, I do like a pad thai.
Nice.
I like it both authentic and Americanized. So I find that to be very comforting, as well as Raisinets, chocolate covered raisins. Milk chocolate, not dark chocolate. That's weird. I didn't even know they made them until my spouse brought them to me, and I was like, "What is this?"
I found out now.
You were that many days old when you knew. Yeah. Comfort music. Wow, that is. I don't have comfort music because I really do like all musics and for their own. And I think all of the genres have their own value except for country music. I believe that country music has no value. Maybe to somebody else, but none
Johnny
to me.
Cash. Sorry, that's like
okay, one song, "A Boy Named Sue." That's it. I could do with a remake of that. Okay, but still. And then comfort movie. There's definitely a few that I have watched over and over again. I did really like my Big Fat Greek Wedding. That holds a special place in my heart. What else is a comfort movie? I enjoy a Star Wars, not Episode 1. Why? Both the original trilogy, but I don't like that Grand Admiral Thrawn wasn't in the final 3 movies. I didn't like that at all. But so now we've talked about what I didn't like about my own comfort. I mean, really, I'm just not a settled person. Like, that's it. I mean, I will, like, it's never perfect. We just keep striving. I'll let you know. Next time you have me on the show, I'll have a different comfort movie.
Okay. Yeah. And this can be similar, like a similar question. What is a book or movie that and this is I kind of asking like favorite trans allegory, but like what is a book or movie that you are claiming as a trans allegory? Because we all have one.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, she's trans.
Yeah, she's trans.
They didn't write her that way, but yeah, they did.
And you know what? I want to talk about this a little bit more. There are so many more trans girl or trans women allegories than there are trans man allegories or like trans masculine allegories.
Okay.
I think. I don't know. We could talk about it. Because I think that, you know what it is? Because I think, and I wonder if this is universal or if this is just my weirdness.
Okay.
I really was just viewing all of the young men in the movies, like of a particular age, as being trans allegories because I just wanted to be them. but like slightly different.
I mean,
I claim all of the movies. I claim the Goonies for sure. Absolutely. They're going on an adventure journey and they all come out like different riches. Absolutely. We all just come out at the end. We all come out at the end and we're all changed in different ways. That's what I like. God, I can't even believe that I'm oddly blanking. I mean, I think it's because we all knew The Matrix, but then when everybody started writing about The Matrix, we were like, oh, shit. For sure, The Matrix. That's why we all kind of liked it. And I feel like that's why for me as a trans masculine person, I was like, I like this. I can relate to this, but I'm not like seeing myself in it so much. But I'm like seeing my friends, or I'm like, this is relatable. This is my community. And so I wonder, I don't know. I feel like you should ask everybody about The Matrix and how they felt about it.
I'll do
it. Challenge accepted. Yeah. I think, you know what? I have taken this like turn where I'm trying not to just look for allegories. I'm looking for like really explicit character for trans, right? Like I really like the YA novel Cemetery Boys.
Okay.
I think it's by Aiden Thomas, and like I really liked. I mean, I like frankly YA novels are my escape for, and especially queer characters. There's so many more queer characters written in YA than there are in regular adult kind of mainstream fiction, and it's harder to find. Like Book Riot does this LGBTQ queer thing that I get emails about. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness.
Too.
Do you? Okay. No, so I'm like, thank you for somebody curating this for me, so I don't have to just like stealthily go find it. I mean, because it used to be that, you know, there would be one bookstore. There was like the LGBT bookstore, which was clearly off limits because as soon as you walked in there, everybody would know you were queer. But you could go to like the mainstream kind of bookstore and there'd be like one narrow shelf of the LGBT stuff. And it was always about like violence or history or I don't know, like a biography, but there was never any fiction in there. So you'd have to like wander into the larger section of fiction and like hope your gaydar picked something up, you know? And that's just weird to feel like that lost. So I envy everybody and also myself for getting the Book Riot stuff so I can just find them and buy them from my independent LGBT owned bookstore or Black owned bookstore, one of the two. Yeah.
And related question. What do you like to read? And I'm asking like kind of like, are you a fiction or a nonfiction person? But you go into as much detail as you want.
Okay. I actually like to have multiple books going at one time.
Right.
And I like to read both fiction and nonfiction at the same time. And I realized that, so I'm looking down at my phone because I started to just keep track of what I was reading and on what device, because sometimes I was losing what I was reading when, and like I didn't always have like, you know, the print book next to me. So I've got a list of I'll just give you my 2021 books read, like that I finished already. So I read The Disordered Mind, What Unusual Brains Tell Us About Ourselves. I listened to Jazz Jennings' audiobook, Being Jazz. Dark Sky Rising, Reconstruction and the Dawn of Jim Crow, which was also an audiobook. Deathless Divide, which is the sequel to Dread Nation, which have you read it?
No, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's basically like if in the middle of the Civil War, like the dead rose and zombies were around. And so you've got like racists and you've still got slavery, but it's like with zombies and it's just cool. And that was the sequel. Patsy, which is also like a queer novel. Red at the Bone. Asperger's Children, which is about like weird Austrian experiments on Asperger's children. The Binti trilogy, which is sci-fi, but like Afro-futurism. I listened to Queen's Peril, which is a Star Wars novella. Death Sentence, Inside Story of the John List Murders, which happened here in New Jersey. I listened to Real Queer America. The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, Akata Witch, another like in the vein of Binti, but not really. It's also a sequel. I forget the original one. By Way of Sorrow, but I'll get back to that. Remind me. I'm going to tell you about that. In the Dream House audiobook, Leadership in Turbulent Times, about a bunch of presidents. Eleanor and Hick, like Eleanor Roosevelt's love interest, Lorena Hickok. And then I reread American Gods. So that's what I've read in 2021 or listened to 2021. So I feel like there's a broad, like there's biography, fiction, nonfiction. But my favorite book so far has been By Way of Sorrow by my friend Robin Geigel, who's a trans woman, who's also an attorney. Yeah. Who has written a book with a trans woman main character, 2 main characters, that's not necessarily about them just being trans. It's it's a legal thriller set in New Jersey, and it is really designed for like non-trans people to like read a character who's trans and not be like, well, clearly they're gonna die. Because that's the trope, right? Like the trans person's always going to die. But not in this book. Both trans characters live. I'm going to spoil that.
That's the spoil. That's the spoiler I want. Whenever there's a trans person in something, you can tell a trans person that you're like they make it to the end. It's just like, okay. Yeah,
it's like just a professional courtesy that we offer one another. Like, don't worry, this is okay. But yeah, so I really liked it. For me, it was a quick read. It was like a beach read. You can get it off of Amazon. There's already a second book with the same main character on the way. So it's like you don't do a one and done. Again, By Way of Sorrow by Robin Geigel. And her son is also a published author, not trans, but wrote a book called The Ferryman Institute, which is, I know, right? It's okay. But but it's really neat to know like 2 published authors. Oh, and my name is in the thank yous at the end. I did not know it was there, but it was really cool. I was like, oh my God, it was like I wrote this book, but I didn't. I take credit for it a
little. Okay. And last question I'm gonna ask you. Not this is like I didn't suddenly decide to head at the end. Last question I'm going to ask you is, who are some other people doing good work out there? And that can be in the legal realm, but you interpret that like all my questions as you will.
Right. I really think that there is so much being put out by trans people of color, both music, art, poetry, spoken word. I mean, political narratives, like theory. I think that the work being done right there is just awesome. And I think that it doesn't get the visibility that it needs. And it doesn't really get the platform that it always needs. Because, for a number of reasons. But those are like kind of like unsung heroes. I also think that a lot of straight cis parents are doing really incredible activism, and I don't usually like to be like, yay, allies. But these people aren't allies. They're just being really good parents for their kids. But the flip side of that is we just know that the outcomes are so awful when it's the opposite. So when they're out there doing good, we don't hear those stories because they don't want them told, because they're like, no, I'm not going to out my kid so I can get some glory over being a trans parent. And that is like, that's the rich tapestry upon which like trans lives are built, right? Like, because those kids they're like, yeah, cool, I get to just be who I am and live my life to the fullest. And yeah, transness is just one aspect of my identity because I'm so much more, but nobody held me back because of my transness. And that is, I think, what's really analogous for a lot of other groups, where it's like, it shouldn't be an impediment for you to be able to do the awesome things that you're able to do. Of course, Charlie Arrowwood in New York. Charlie's a personal friend, but also just an amazing advocate who hates taking credit for themselves. But I know they were instrumental in getting the Gender Recognition Act passed there. Kathy Sakamura and the crew at the National Center for Lesbian Rights are doing, and Asaf Orr are doing great work helping affirming parents in various states. It might say NCLR and say lesbian, but they're headed by a trans man, Shannon Mintner. So like the issues intersect. And, just there are so many people who really, and I know that we're like really closing out of time, but there are so many people that you wouldn't expect that, call me up and they're like, just this week, I got a call out of the blue from somebody who was like, I do personal injury, and I thought I was just representing this person on like a basic assault charge, and then all of a sudden they want to bring the fact that their assailant was trans into it. And basically they were like, this rubs me the wrong way, but how do I get out of bringing that part into it, but while still being like doing my zealous ethical duty to my client? And I was like, look at you thinking about that shit. Well, you know what? I want to give you a reason to take this case, because I don't want some other Yahoo taking it and being like, yeah, sure, let's bring up the fact that the assailant was trans, when the assault had nothing to do with the fact that the assailant was trans. That's just one aspect of that person's personality. So I think that we don't realize how much our being out and authentic is really impacting people, and how much it is changing hearts and minds.
Yeah.
But I know that I see it multiple times a week, random attorneys or random people who are like, yeah, I think there's like a policy that needs to be put in place here. Does it exist? And I'm like, I don't know. Sure. And then lo and behold, it does, but nobody's been trained on it. So there's like a connection that needs to be made there. So I think that just regular people have been doing really amazing things, and that's cool because we get the messaging that everybody hates us, and that's not true.
Yeah, thank you. People watching, you have so many people besides We Are Trans and Celeste and Argentino Fiore Law and Advocacy.
Yeah.
To support Celeste. Thank you so much. This was wonderful as always. Everyone watching, next week we are back at our regular time, Saturday, July 3rd at 3 p.m. Eastern. The guest will be Gina Bloom, wonderful stand-up comedian, currently, I believe, in California. It's been a year, so I don't know where anyone is. But and special guest host will be the equally lovely Christian Liu. That is going to be a wonderful conversation. And We Are Trans still doing monthly shows. Our monthly show for June is tomorrow night, still on Zoom. That will be 8 p.m. Eastern. The Badass Trans Women, and you can find that link in the comments. That is a co-promotion with the Tank in New York City, and you can find the ticket link on their website. So this has been We Are Trans Presents Trans Talks, episode 5. And until next time, goodbye. Take care of yourself.